Looking for the king of podcasts? You're at the wrong channel. Looking for good ideas for life? You are far from good hands. If you think the listener is always right, you are far from the right place. Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, a rebel by choice. If you want a host that floats between love and madness, then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
What up? Excuse me while I whip this out. Oh, gnarly! Say what again? Say what again? I dare you. I double dare you, motherfucker. Say what one more goddamn time.
I knew it. I'm surrounded by assholes.
And good evening, friends.
Hey wrestling fans, this is Gary Michael Cappetta, and you're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next match set for one fall to the curfew. Introducing first the manager, the guiding light, Captain Louis Albano. And his protege from the Fiji Islands, 251 pounds, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And his opponent from Puerto Rico, 248 pounds, Mac Rivera.
Well, folks, here in Jackson, New Jersey, Jim Cornette called him the world's most dangerous ring announcer, which might explain what in the hell you were doing out in the front yard to Bugs Bunny there, because Six Flags being up the street.
What's up, Don?
Oh, yeah. Are we going? We're recording?
Yeah,
we're recording.
Yes, it's Gary Michael Cappetta, folks. How we doing, Gary?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing fine. Yeah, you're right. I live on a piece of property very close to Six Flags.
Numbskull.
Yeah, I guess Bugs was trespassing there. That's why he had him in the headlock.
I didn't even know Bugs was here. He's part of Six Flags?
Oh, I guess that was part of your security team on this.
No respect.
Well, I guess I'll lead to the obvious question there.
What?
First and foremost, you're Jersey born and bred, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, I guess or would assume you grew up on the WWF, the New York territory, correct?
I did. I grew up in Hudson County in North Jersey, so we would get New York television stations. And Saturday night, midnight, right after Racing from Roosevelt, was the WWF TV show.
Well, back in the day there, who were some of your favorites?
Bruno Sammartino was the top guy. But there were a lot of guys that I just thought were kind of interesting. Like there was Hans and Max Mortier. They were kind of odd to me. Whenever the midgets were on, that I thought was weird. We're talking about a kid in 6th grade. So we have to look at it from the eyes of someone that's in 6th grade. And at the time...
The characters more so.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't even know that I should be watching this. Because it was these people with not a whole lot of clothes on rolling around in the middle of a sweaty arena. So you put that in the head of a kid, who's going through puberty.
It almost seems kind of dirty in certain ways.
Yeah, it was like porno. And it was like, and I didn't let anyone know I was watching this until I knew it was okay.
Well, would you say it hit that it was okay? Did you have a conversation with your folks, or was it kids in school, or?
I don't know. It was just a gradual thing. I guess maybe I talked to other kids and maybe they watched it. But, it wasn't something that I broadcast. And actually, there was such a stigma on wrestling fans back in the 60s and 70s that even as an adult, you didn't go out of your way to say, oh, yeah, I watch pro wrestling. because you knew that what they were going to say to you is, "Oh, that's fake." Like, what are you, an idiot?
Yeah.
Like, why do you waste your time doing that? So it wasn't, as a kid, it was strange because I'd never seen anything like that before. But even after you became a fan, it wasn't something that you broadcast. It was like a little underground network of, we know that we're into this spectacle, and if they don't get it, tough.
Yeah, one of those things. Well, was anybody else in your family fans that you kind of find out later?
No, never. It was just something I found by surfing, by channel surfing, and just got to like it.
Well, I did hear a story because you've done a couple of interviews, and the one story I thought was very interesting because you mentioned his name right there off the bat, and he's been a guest with us as well, Bruno Sammartino.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you would agree with me because you got to deal with him as a colleague.
Yes.
Later on. What? Not only a consummate professional, but we found him to be such a, in other people said such a, honest guy and straightforward guy, and he remembers everything.
He's down to earth.
Oh, yeah. You don't see that today with today's athletes or celebrities or
I
whatever.
think it's probably a rare thing where you could have a hero that eventually you would become friendly with.
Oh, yeah.
That you would get to know him. And the very first night that I announced, I didn't meet him because I wasn't allowed in the locker room. I wasn't allowed in the dressing room back in the day. But he was in the main event.
Okay.
So the thrill of even just being close to him, just to introduce him, was through the roof. It was amazing. And then, of course, as the years went on, we became friends. But I don't know if anyone out there, if you just think of someone that you really have high regards for, whether it be in music or in sports or in theater, and then one day you will become friends with them.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's especially when the guy that you wind up being friends with is even greater than the image that was presented.
And they always say there's that level of expectation or whatever that if you meet that person that they might not live up to that expectation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Or they'll just make that fandom or whatever you want to come crashing down.
Yeah, they just may be an idiot. They may be a jerk, and they may have a certain, and I'm sure there are those that are like this, that have a certain
gravitas, would you say?
Personal, public persona.
Yeah.
And it's just all BS. No, but he
wasn't
like that at all. Because what drew me to him as a kid was in his interviews and in his promos, he just came across as being very, very genuine.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to the point that probably the most successful characters there's a core of that
extension of your personality
of that wrestler, in there, for sure. Yeah, he was awesome.
And it's great because he'll call either myself or the producer who set it up. We had him on maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, maybe a little longer when it was right around the time he was, made good graces with New York again and all, But since then, we've either been at the same event that he was at, and he would make it a point to say hello, or there'd be phone calls exchanged with us. Either us calling him, "Hey, how you doing, Bruno?" Just to see how, or he'll call up one of us and say, "Hey, how's everybody's doing?" So to say he's down to earth and humble and however you want to put it, Bruno exceeds what you think of him as far as the in-ring
absolutely
guy. Well, I guess we'll continue with that first main event you actually called, though, with Bruno, was against Nikolai Volkov, correct?
Yes, it was in the old Wildwood, New Jersey Convention Hall on the boardwalk. And at the time, they ran shows once a week in the summer in Wildwood.
Makes sense to go to where the people are.
Right, at the Jersey Shore. In the summer, in the winter, they would be at the armories inland and at high schools and colleges. And then in the summer, we'd be in Asbury Park, New Jersey's Convention Hall, Wildwood, Atlantic City, the action would move to the Jersey Shore where all the vacationers were.
You go to where the people are, that's for sure.
Right.
But how did you end up getting... And I noticed, obviously, from doing a little bit of reading and acting like I know what I'm doing here as far as an interviewer goes, but how did you get connected with Gorilla Monsoon, who gave you that big break?
At Wildwood, the first night that I announced, I didn't know that he was the promoter. I didn't know that he was part owner of the WWF. It was Capital Wrestling, was the business side, but I didn't know that he was an owner there. And as the weeks went on, I came to know that, to understand that. I had just graduated from college. I had a teaching degree. I had gotten a teaching job in the fall after this first summer of announcing, just in Wildwood. And he called me up and he asked me if I wanted to continue with him. So I said sure. So I would, he would promote New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And he had an average of 2 shows a week. And weeknights, could be a weekend, at any time. So I would teach school in the daytime, and I would announce for him at night, because everything was within driving time.
Yeah.
So he, I guess he liked what he saw. I don't know what it was that he saw that he liked, because I had no experience. I had no formal training. I just volunteered one night to announce and got in and did it. So, but the best way to learn how to do anything is to do it.
Which, speaking of which, because obviously when you look at like TV today and even back in the day too, from when I was growing up in the 80s on,
Okay.
as far as TV, pay-per-view, things like that, everybody's either got notes off to the side or they don't have cards. How did you try to remember everybody's like, Gorilla Monsoon is 6'5"?
I never did.
Yeah, when you do the announcement.
When you see me from the first day that I announced until my last day in WCW, I always had it in my hand. I just wasn't that confident that I would remember. So what's the big deal to have the information on a card in my hand in case that I blanked out or I didn't know? So I never did memorize them. After you do the same guy over and over again, you don't need to look at the card. But I did have them. I wasn't that bold.
Was that one of those you'd keep in your jacket pocket or something like that?
If you look at any old YouTube clip, you'll see it in my hand. Yeah,
well, I meant if you needed to grab them.
I wouldn't have even done that because that would have shown that I forgot.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to risk that. Even like for all 35 years that I did the ring announcing, I had it in my hand.
Did any of the bosses or the promoters or anybody booking throughout that 35-year period give you grief for carrying your information that you needed?
No, I'm not sure why you're considering it to be negative.
No, I don't consider it negative.
So why would you consider them to think it was negative?
Well, you never know because you always you see guy. You don't see it often. That's why I'm.
What they care about is your delivery, and how you interact or don't interact with the fans and the wrestlers, and the fact that you have it written. The information written down it's inconsequential.
Yeah. Speaking of which, of interactions with talent and whatnot, early on, if I remember hearing this correctly and reading this, George Steele used to give you a little bit of grief in the ring.
Yeah, he always used to chase. He scared the hell out of me. I was just a kid. I was a 21-year-old kid when I started, and the first time I introduced him, which was at a television taping for the WWF network, he jumped me and he sacked me and he was on top of me on my back and he was pulling my coat off and he was eating my carnation boutonniere and he scared the hell out of me. So every time he approached the ring, I wouldn't stay in. I'd get out, and it was legit.
He scared the shit out of you pretty much.
Yeah, because and I know that this is very difficult for a fan or an indie wrestler of today, or any wrestler of today to conceive of, but I wasn't allowed in where the wrestlers dressed for probably 2 years. I wasn't allowed to go near the locker room. Anyone that wasn't a wrestler or a referee wasn't allowed. So there was a separate place for me to dress.
Well, I'll go back to the question I was going to bring up with about the interaction in a minute, but the whole respect thing with the dressing room and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You said it was about 2 years, but do you think there was a certain instance that where you finally earned that respect of the boys?
Yes, because when I was introducing everyone, and they could see how I reacted to them in the ring, and that I respected their craft and what they did. And I knew enough that if, for instance, a Blackjack Mulligan approached me and was yelling, that I would always defer to him. I would never, ever, ever like get in anyone's face. With the professionalism, I think that and it was just a natural thing. It wasn't something I planned. I think they saw that I was that I contributed to the show. Never sold a ticket, never, but I elevated their craft.
Yeah, you were spoken a wheel
in my little way.
Yeah,
and I guess that was why. And then when Monsoon brought me in, and when Monsoon, quote unquote, embraced me and would call me into the locker room to give me the lineup, that he was the leader.
Gorilla carried a lot of respect in his.
Absolutely. So when they saw that, and then I was allowed in the locker room, then it was an unspoken message. Yeah. But nothing was ever spoken. Nothing was ever said. It was just
like you said. Over time, you kind of earn that.
Yeah.
Respect and. Yeah. Professionalism and all that.
Yeah, because your modern fan and your audience needs to understand that they held themselves out to be a legitimate competition.
Whole different time period, whole different ball game.
Even though they had their crazy characters. Even though there was a George the Animal Steel, even though there was the Beast, even though there were the Samoans who we thought couldn't speak English, and they had Lou Albano as their mouthpiece. So, but it was always held as a legitimate competition. It was sanctioned at the time by each state's athletic commission. So they were protecting the facade, their business. And they weren't going to just allow me, who could be a loose cannon, in there to say, I witnessed those two guys that were in the main event last night playing cards with each other. Yeah. Or going out for a beer together. I mean, the guys would never arrive at the arena together if one was a heel and one was a babyface.
And they stayed at separate hotels and just a whole...
Yeah, it was an entirely different
You protected the business so much. It was...
Yeah, and well, even in the 90s with WCW, when we would tour in Europe, we had two tour buses. The good guys and the bad guys. So that when we pulled up to the sports halls there in Germany, you didn't see the Nasty Boys with the Steiner brothers. It
didn't. Just wasn't what.
And that was toward the end of the kayfabe era.
Yeah. Well, since we were talking about both guys real quick here, would you? And we mentioned Bruno and how high esteem he was. Would you say Gorilla was the same way?
Absolutely.
That he was better than what you would have thought of him?
Yeah. Well, Gorilla went through, as far as professionally.
Yeah.
When he began, he was this giant guy from Manchuria.
Yes.
Who didn't speak English, who had a huge bushy beard, and I think Wild Red Berry was his manager who did all the talking for him. So he was... But actually, he was a graduate of Ithaca College and a three-letter man.
Wrestled amateurly.
He wrestled. He was track and I think maybe football. But that was his persona. So he went through stages, and then, quite honestly, that's a huge transition from a beast from Manchuria to all of a sudden being accepted by a clean-shaven guy.
And an announcer and everything else that you saw later on in his...
Right. I don't know how that happened, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. But, and I was reading about him today. Obviously, do you still talk to George Steele once in a while, or hear from him, or
When on the road, sometimes we'll run into each other.
yeah, because I don't know what it was, but I was reading a little bit and don't know the extent, and you know how everything is on the internet. Everything on the internet is true or not true, or whatever. But heard that George was dealing with some health stuff, so, and I know you dealt with him, but
Yeah,
we hope that he's doing okay.
Absolutely. I'm not up on how he's doing health-wise. I know.
Yeah, I heard there was some stuff, but I don't know the extent of it.
I know he's had issues with health, and the last time that I was in touch with him, which, it's been a while now, he was doing well in battling those issues.
Yeah. Yeah, something with his kidneys, like I said, I don't know but we hope he's doing okay.
We wish him well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Another great guy that we got to deal with on several occasions, stand-up guy. But I want to ask you about him before we move on. Do you think he gave you a little bit of extra grief because he was like you, where he also had one foot out in normal society in the education field as well?
Which, of course, I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah.
He would only come around in the summers because he was teaching in, I guess, Michigan.
Yeah.
What would an animal do? I guess that's what would be in his mind as a character.
Yes.
And he actually wasn't attacking me. He was after my flower. So, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
It just so happened that the flower was pinned
attached to you.
Right.
And your jacket.
Right. And I didn't know it at the time, but he did me a great favor because in the WWF, in the early McMahon era, you were not acknowledged as a ring announcer. You were never named on the air. No one, but he was drawing attention to me. So I thank him for that. Jimmy Snuka, it was the same way with Jimmy Snuka a few
where
years
he had
later.
that kind of animalistic kind of.
Yeah, and he attacked me a few times on television.
Yeah.
He tried to take my clothes off.
Well, I know I'm jumping ahead there, but you mentioned a little bit about acknowledgement. Would you say it was in the WCW days that Cornette and Jim Ross was a first really to give you acknowledgement? Hey, that's Gary Michael Cappetta doing a ring announcing.
They were, and Tony Schiavone, Jesse Ventura, they were all, Bobby Heenan, they were all terrific. It wasn't the first time that I experienced that because in between WWF and NWA, I worked with Vern Gagne.
In the AWA, yes.
Right, and on ESPN. And we would always pass off to each other. And now down to Doug McLeod after I introduced the match. Let's go up to Gary Michael Cappetta. So that was the first time that I was ever publicly...
When you were working for Gagne.
Yes.
How was he as a promoter, boss, whatever you would have considered?
He was a terrific... He was like... I always compare him to a politician. He always was gregarious. He always looked great. He always had a great personality. He always made me feel well and, fine, and always complimented me. Any situation that anyone else had, I'm unaware of.
Yeah.
I mean, I read, you read all the stories and,
Yeah.
and guys tell stories in their shoot interviews or whatever, but he always delivered what he promised to me.
He was pretty professional, straightforward with you then.
With me, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a decent relationship. I mean, as a ring announcer, he would, and this was unheard of, he would fly me from the East Coast to Minneapolis or Chicago to do his main events, his major like Wrestle Rock, and at the Hubert H. Humphrey Metrodome, and we did Super Clash 3 in Chicago, and for an announcer, a ring announcer,
To bring you in like that.
yeah, for that extra expense that he would have, I really appreciated that. It was unusual because I started to announce for him on his ESPN show when it was broadcast out of Atlantic City.
Yeah.
At the Tropicana. But after half of a year, he moved the show to Las Vegas.
Yes.
I was teaching at the time, so I didn't go with the show. But he remembered me, and
He always kept a,
It was nice. It was very nice of him. And when I was there, he treated me well. He had me in a hotel. My flight was a little later in the day. He had his secretary call me in the morning, hey, Gary, what are you doing? How about if we send someone over, pick you up? They brought me to his offices. I hung out. I got to meet the people there. And then they brought me to the airport. That's huge for a ring announcer.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sounded like they treated you like gold.
you have to remember, like a ring announcer in the scheme of wrestling, of the performance side, of wrestler, commentator, referee, ring announcer. Ring announcer is at the bottom of the rung.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think we make a great contribution if we know what we're doing. We do it well, but a lot of people wouldn't know a good ring announcer from one that's not.
It's like almost like the same role as like a referee. The good ones you don't notice, but if somebody is worse or worse, you tend to notice it more.
Yeah, but the referee is so much more intricately involved in a match. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not in any way.
Yeah, but you still kind of, like you said, you notice.
But as the
difference.
match is presented, a referee can enhance that match or can ruin that match.
Yes.
I don't have that kind of input.
But do you think...
And actually, a really good ring announcer, you're not going to... As the event is happening, your attention is not drawn to the ring announcer.
No.
My job is to draw your attention to the stars, to the performers. And then later on, if you watch it on video or if you're just thinking about it, you might realize, how did I get so into that? Part of it was the way I announced the guy or I introduced the guy, or but as it's happening, you shouldn't even think of me.
True. But obviously, you're one of the names that is, when people talk about wrestling announcer or ring announcers, obviously you earn some sort of respect because you're one of the names that are thrown out there when people say a Howard Finkel, a Michael Cappetta, or you go down a list of some legendary guys.
Yeah.
But so you must have done something right, Gary.
Yes, I did.
Do you know? Do you think you know what that is? Why people hold you in such high regard?
I think that I think my success is more built on believability than my voice. Howard's announcing voice is impeccable.
Yeah.
But there are other times, as far as my importance to the promoter, when I had to deliver news to the audience that was important, like changes of things or someone not showing up for a show, and I had a rapport with the fans that they believed whatever I told them, and I think that was important. And the tie between being a teacher and being an announcer is that I'm a communicator, so I know how to communicate, to be clear about what's going on. I would always put myself in the third row as a fan, and if I had to hear this news, how would I want to hear it?
Yeah.
What would be the most effective way? So that, for instance, every month I announced for the NWA at the Baltimore Arena.
Okay.
And there were times when main event guy didn't show, or even an upper card guy, and I had to tell them, what you've paid for, you're not going to see. And then in my announcement, what my goal was to try to get them to believe that what you're going to see instead is even better than what you thought you were going to see.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And I would always gauge my success in doing that, because we always offered a refund. If it was a main event that we were not going to deliver. So intermission, I would always check with the promoter and I would ask him how many refunds were there. And I would gauge as to how I took part responsibility, in my head, as to how well I did in getting them to keeping them there.
Did you do you find yourself with some of those announcements, you yourself getting any heat in terms of, even though you were just a messenger, telling the fans, hey, whoever didn't show up or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, I mean, there was, in fact, one of the fans sent me a video. It was, I guess it was done on a camcorder when I was with WCW. It was in the Meadowlands. I don't think it was a televised event. So it was just a house show, homemade video of me telling the people that Ric Flair was stripped of his title.
So we talking like 90, 91, when he made the jump to New York?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that didn't get such a great... There's nothing I could do with that.
You're just a messenger here, you know?
Right, but it wasn't an announcement where, oh, I'm sorry this happened, but instead you're going to get that. Yeah. It was just, I'm sorry, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
You know, Ric Flair is no longer the world champion.
Yeah.
And so I had no way to bounce
Try to make a positive out of this situation,
yes.
You know.
And as an announcer, when I would announce bad news, whether I had good news to follow or not, I would say it and just let people boo, throw things, whatever they were going to do. And physically, my communication to them was, I know, this sucks.
You were a fan too, so you know.
Right. This sucks. And just pause and let it sink in that I'm not happy either.
Yeah.
No one's happy about this.
What's up, Doc?
I'll tell you what's up. Based out of Atlantic City, New Jersey, Geek Time Entertainment runs exclusively along with different events in the area to strategize with their partners who will benefit with increased exposure and patron traffic. Geek Time Entertainment will work with your event in increasing the event's traffic via social media, radio, and storefront advertisements.
Holy cow!
Also, they will help increase business for your company and event with different sales incentives.
Duh.
Whether your event will be small or even mid-scale, Geek Time Entertainment is the group to work with.
That's what I'm talking about.
Contact them today at geektimeentertainment@gmail.com or facebook.com/geektimeentertainment.
Oh my God, who the hell cares?
Oh boy, is this great!
With over 30 years of experience and a superb reputation for being a detail-oriented company, Lacey Cleaning has some of the highest work standards in the cleaning business.
That's the fact, Jack!
Whether it's carpet cleaning, tile, grout cleaning, new construction cleanup, rental turnovers, vent and duct cleaning, odor elimination, office and or business cleaning, power washing, residential cleaning, you name it, they do it. Woo! Check them out. To contact them today, laceycleaning@gmail.com or call them at 609-709-8536.
That's what I'm talking about.
And then I would roll into what the good news was. With
If you had good news about
right.
that show or whatever the case
Yeah, there's
is.
a technique to it. And it's a matter of controlling a crowd.
Yeah.
And there is a power to that.
Do you find, speaking of that, do you find a certain, where there's a lot of psychology and all as far as the matches are concerned, do you find there's a similar thing as far as psychology of announcing as well?
It's just that limited what I just laid out. And also, I always introduce guys, whether you're the first match out or you're the last match out, I would never introduce a guy, and through my introduction, you would assume he's just an enhancement guy. I would always give everyone the same respect, the same introduction. Now, of course, the upper level guys, they're going to get more of a reaction when I make that introduction, but I always, everyone has a role on the card. And I never would minimize whether it's the first guy out or the main event.
Yeah. I want to throw this fan question out because, of what some of the things we were talking about a little earlier. And you may even know the guy who's a friend of the show, Evan Ginsberg.
Okay.
He wanted to know, first of all, you actually answered that first one, but do you notice more and more, like as far as if you see any shows, and I know before we start rolling tape, you mentioned you don't watch much of the TV product.
Right.
But if you're at a show, because sometimes you're booked and whatnot,
yep.
Do you have a problem with, like, if you see ring announcers or getting involved with the show, and whether it's interacting with the audience or the talent or even sometimes giving bumps to the talent.
No, you know what my biggest problem with a ring announcers that I've seen, and I once in a while I go out to an indie show.
Yeah.
Are ring announcers that don't pay attention to the match after they've introduced it. Ring announcers that will go in, intro the match, sit down where everyone can see them, and start going through their phone. What kind of a message is that? That what's going on in the ring isn't important.
Yeah.
That is my biggest pet peeve, let's just say, of ring announcers. You are part, as a ring announcer, you are part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
You are spotlighted in some way. So people look at you because you're sitting at ringside. So you are sending a message as to what's going on in the ring. So that you should be paying attention to what's going on in the ring. When a guy does an incredible move on another guy, you should physically react to that. Like, wow! Or, oh no! But to sit there and go through your phone while the show's going on is sending the message, hey, idiots, you just paid for something that I could care less about.
Well, speaking of that,
And
yeah,
can
go
I,
ahead.
if I might, you really,
Feel free.
I would say the same. I had a problem. You and I, you were kind enough to hook me up with tickets to go see Phil Vassar.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you remember, but we were sitting there and I said something to you about someone that was on the side of the stage.
Oh, yes, yeah, early on in the show. There.
Yes. Do you
During
remember?
the opening act and all?
Yes, during the opening act. This person that people didn't come to see. I didn't even know this.
I think it was the guy with the soundboard, was it? Yeah, because you kind of saw like the soundboard and stuff off this.
And he had this little flashlight.
Yeah.
And he kept on shining it toward the audience. And I'm trying to watch this musical act.
And off to the side, yeah.
And I'm getting distracted.
Yeah, I remember you bringing this up.
Remember that?
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to that because it's very difficult for that performer to who is not the headliner. He wasn't Phil Vassar.
No, he was the acoustic artist there.
Right. He was the opening act.
Yeah.
And he's trying to introduce himself to the audience, and he's trying to win over the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I really need the stagehand to distract the audience?
No.
And so he was undermining, and I don't think he meant to.
No.
Don't get me wrong. But he was undermining the performance of this guy that's working his heart out. He probably was thrilled to be opening for Phil Vassar.
Yeah.
I see the same thing with a ring announcer who sits down at ringside,
looking at his phone or
looks
whatever
at his phone,
yeah.
or starts talking to. It doesn't have to be just
The
his
girl
phone.
ringing the bell or whatever the
Yes,
case may be.
right, or fans. There's plenty of time in between matches or before the show or after the show to do that.
Yeah.
But when a wrestler is wrestling, that's where your attention should be, and you should be reacting to it.
Exactly. Evan's other question was, which I find interesting.
Well, you really hit a button there, didn't you?
Yeah, no, hey, yeah,
I don't
that's
mean to
good.
be like.
No, that is perfectly fine.
I don't mean to sound so aggressive, but
No, that.
But I love live entertainment.
Exactly.
And I'm really supportive of the performers.
And whether it's like you said earlier, whether it's theater, whether it's wrestling or a sports event or whatever it is.
Whatever, a magic, it could be anything. I love the circus. And anything that detracts or undermines the performance, it annoys me.
And I don't blame you on that one.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to. We're still friends, right? I didn't mean to come at you.
No. That's take me out of the armbar, please. Evan's other question I found interesting though was, because you're in the profession, was who do you consider some of the greatest ring announcers and why?
Well, when I started, everybody patterns themselves after someone else. Jimmy Lennon was an old-time ring announcer from the Olympic in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And I always thought he was great. I always liked him.
Okay.
There was another guy who I wouldn't want to pattern myself after as an announcer. His name was Friendly Bob Freed. And he was the ring announcer of the old WWF show. And what I liked about him was, and I guess goofy is a negative word. I don't really mean to be negative. He was like an everyman. Jimmy Lennon was a polished professional. But Friendly Bob Freed he could be your buddy. He could be your uncle. And I like the combination of the two, of the professionalism and then the approachability of a guy like a Friendly Bob Freed.
Yeah.
So I think it's a combination. I think any wrestler, an announcer, a performer, a musical artist, you're always going to pattern yourself after someone and then eventually get to a space where you've created your own persona.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, because I haven't talked to, we had, like I said, we've had several guests of the generation where they had an interaction with what most people realize is, or call him Vince Sr. And you worked for Vince Sr. Because Junior was still the now boss of the WWF, whatever you want to call it. He was still announcing.
He was the commentator.
Yes. What were your so I haven't brought him up much, but what were your professional opinions of Senior?
Senior was a very classy individual. He was very soft spoken. He would everything that you might think about from like the old school promoter chomping on a cigar. Like he was just the opposite of. He was a very refined individual. But he was very conscious of his costs, and with me, at one time I asked him for a raise for the TV shows that I was doing for him. I think I was probably every time we did them, it was 3 weeks worth of television,
mm-hmm.
and I think I was probably getting paid $40 at each time, and I asked him for a raise once, and he just looked at me and told me, I can't afford that. And I was speechless because I'm talking to the owner of, one of the hottest territories in the world. Yeah. But here's, and people can make what they want of it. At the end of the night, he told his money guy to give me that extra money. And every time after that, I got paid the $60 instead of the $40. But he couldn't say yes to me.
In front of his lieutenants or whoever were.
They were there. I was never complimented, except by Monsoon, by the McMahons. No one ever would say, good job, Gary. Vinny would just ignore me. So you take what you want from it.
Yeah. And I don't know, obviously I met him in a different situation. Vince Jr., the one in charge now, obviously I met him a couple of times in a different environment and all. But would you say he was and I'm not trying to bury axes, but you don't seem to have an axe to grind. Snobbish or nose to the air amongst somebody like
Vinny?
this? Yeah.
I think he's very insecure, actually. And I think he would overcompensate for that insecurity as the boss's son, by strutting around. I mean, what you see is that when he had that Mr. McMahon character, once again, was an exaggeration of who he really is. The way I see it. I'm making a distinction between the person and how a person who owns a huge business treats individuals versus his success in that business. So that anything that any difference that I might have with him and how he conducted himself with his help has nothing to do. Does not undermine his success. I mean, he was.
And we're not bashing a guy as far as what he's done and accomplished.
Right. I can just tell you how he treated me.
Yeah.
I can tell you how he sandbagged wrestlers to keep in the early days, like in the 1984 or so, how he sandbagged wrestlers to keep them from getting merchandise money. To have them without knowing what they were signing, and they signed it, so I guess they were adults and they were responsible for it, but they signed all of their rights away. Him knowing, because he was 10 steps ahead of everyone else.
Almost like that shrewd business side of things, you know.
Cutthroat. I mean, it was really that was why Sergeant Slaughter left the WWF
With the whole G.I. Joe.
in the mid 80s, because he started to say, look, why aren't we getting, at the time, in the early days, there was no video that they sold. All there were these old discolored pictures that you could buy at the arena.
Yeah.
So the toys, the videos at the time, the DVDs, they
now
didn't
that's
exist.
even changed now with that network and everything else.
Right. So he had everyone. I didn't sign it. I didn't sign one. I was given one, but I wouldn't sign it. He had everyone sign away their rights for the rest of their life. And if anyone who signed that got any residuals, it's because he decided
Who got them and who didn't.
right. So, and no one was told, here, sign this, and this is what it means.
Yeah.
It's just, come on, boys, before you leave tonight, just sign these. And
Where now, from what, because I know some guys who've been there, and say from the 2000s on, with a few exceptions of guys, but, where today's, when I say today, I mean let's say from 1990 on, a little bit further from what you're talking about, where there are guys and gals who are a little more educated to,
yep.
as far as, well, I want to go home and read this, or I want to have
Oh,
an attorney read it, or I want, you know what I'm saying?
that makes you're dangerous then.
Yeah,
They don't want you.
They just want you to sign off.
Right. They don't want you to think. You do it, even though you're supposedly an independent contractor.
Yeah.
Which is a bunch of bluey.
Bullshit. Yeah.
That's just a bunch.
So many loopholes there.
Because when I can't work for anyone else, and I have to be where you tell me to be, when you tell me to be there,
Wouldn't that make you
and
an
to
employee?
do what you tell me to do when I get there, I don't see that as being a self-employed contractor.
Yeah, because and you hear about that all the time from certain people.
So anyone that had a brain like Sergeant Slaughter was,
and it would ask questions on things.
Right. Now, he was a major draw.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he was dismissed. So that sent a message to everyone.
And, well, if they let him walk, what's he going to do to me?
That's right. And now he wound up doing really well with the G.I. Joe series.
And he went over to the AWA for a while.
Right. He did very well for himself. And it's interesting that in business, and Vinny's all business, Slaughter years later came back and was I don't know if he still works with them.
Yeah, I don't know what his step, but he wasn't behind the scenes after he retired.
Absolutely. So there were no hard feelings. Actually, he gained respect from the guy that was trying to hold him down.
Yeah.
Because, he wasn't going to be just a mindless imbecile.
Yeah, because and you see, maybe not for that particular same reason, but it seems like, I could see outside looking in, Vinny will look at business as business, and if you may have had a disagreement with him, talent, whatever, like Sarge, or for other reasons, that if you guys can make money together, the company and the talent, he'll bring you back into the fold.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Ultimate Warrior or Bruno.
As he should. And he's absolutely, that's a correct way of conducting business.
And I definitely give him credit for that. And obviously, you can't believe everything you read on the internet and stuff that happened with different people. But I find it interesting that they leave it, that door is open. If there's money to be made there, you're walking back.
Well, Bruno was the main, was Hogan also.
Yeah. How many times has he been back and forth?
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
The other thing that there's nothing wrong with is letting someone go. On the other side of things, I think that performers believe that when they sign a contract with a major organization, that they think they're there for life. And no, like when your run is over, it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And it's up to you as an individual to prepare for the rest of your life. And McMahon or Triple H or Stephanie they're not responsible for you. Like, if they hire you when you're 25, they're not responsible for you for the next 50 years.
No.
So sometimes guys get let go and there seems to be some kind of bitterness. And no, it's just time to move on. Do something else.
And it's not the company, and perfect example, I can go a different direction with that, is, and granted the company is doing things with the wellness policy and whatever, but it's also not the company's responsibility to handle most of these grown adults, and some of them make better money than others. How you save do you save your money? Do you pay your taxes? Do you?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, do you think about?
That's right.
Down the line.
One of my favorite expressions is, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you save. And not just in wrestling, but
in any walk of
in life. People have a tendency to raise their standard of living to what their income is.
Yeah.
And the way to get ahead is to, you treat yourself. You begin making, I made really good money in WCW. You treat yourself, here and there, but keep your standard of living where you are happy, and not a big, and bank that with the rest of that money, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. And you're right. As an adult human being, that's your responsibility.
Yeah, that's not the company you're working for.
Right. If you're going to piss your money away every night going to clubs, on booze, on drugs, on women, on whatever, that's your problem.
Yeah.
And you probably would be doing that if you were working in a different segment of the population, if you weren't a wrestler.
Because it's sad, because there's guys on the wrestling side of things that not that you know the numbers, but they drew some good money or made some good money, or however you want to put it. They should be able to live comfortably if they were smart, but they're out still working the indie scenes and for that. You know what I mean? You shouldn't have to be, The
other side of that is, if you're going to enter, as opposed to music or as opposed to the stage or movies, if you're going to be an athlete, you need to know that your career is going to end when your life is only half over.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare for the rest of that. Have you educated yourself in any way? Have you developed a skill, like carpentry, like whatever? If people think of when they were growing up, all of your audience, we all watch certain TV shows.
Yeah.
Situation comedies or dramas or whatever. From whatever decade you were in grammar school and high school. Mm-hmm. Think of the hundreds and hundreds of actors that you saw on the air. Mm-hmm. And you have no idea where they are now. In reality, they didn't make enough money for the rest of their lives.
No.
They may be selling real estate now. They may have opened a restaurant. It's life. And as an athlete, the end is going to be halfway through your life.
Yeah.
Life expectancy, at least.
And as far as wrestling is concerned, or any other sport, like you said, or other professions, you only have a certain amount of bumps you have a certain bump card that maybe you might only be able to say, like a Daniel Bryan, where you may have had a couple more years, but your body won't let you.
Yeah.
So your body breaks down a lot.
Right.
So it's back to being smart.
Right. And the other thing is the guys that make those mistakes along the way are the guys that are highlighted. But I get a little annoyed because I think equal attention should be brought to guys that have made wrestling their career and have been good family men and have saved their money.
Yeah.
I mean, there are equal amount of or more of those guys than the guys that get the attention that
weren't so good.
That fall off the rails, for whatever, reason. Yeah. And not to make any judgments, but why don't we concentrate on the guys that we can admire?
And they're trying to do the right thing.
They're trying to
by
do
themselves
right.
and their families and whatever.
And some of them are so upstanding that they're helping some of the guys that have fallen off the rails.
Yeah.
And kudos to them.
A perfect example of that, Diamond Dallas Page.
That's right.
But you brought up a good point there, Gary, with some guys having another trade or whatever. And I know a couple guys in the business who are friends of the show again, who had other traits. Not did you have people look at you, whether it was, even though you didn't mean it with like a cockiness or anything, where you knew, you like you said earlier, you went to school and became a teacher and were teaching as well.
Right.
I believe, what, you have like 20, 25 years as a teacher as well?
Yeah.
Did you have like a, not so much an arrogance, but you could breathe a sigh of relief going, hey, this wrestling announcing thing don't work. You know, guess what? I got another trade I can go do.
Right. I
to
would have
pay the bills.
I would have never been a full-time announcer if it wasn't that WCW came and asked if I was interested in signing a contract, because that was Ted Turner, that was TBS, that was a well-established entity. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have given up teaching to announce for like a territory, or no, I just wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I was just fortunate that I had the opportunity when I did.
But you knew in the back of your mind there, whether the contract ran out or whatever happens, like you said, things you can't. Where you had that in the back of your mind. Hey, well, I can always go back to teaching, or I can. Yeah. You had that trade in the back of your head. I'll tell you what. Use.
I was so lucky. God was smiling on me, because when I resigned from my teaching position to work with WCW in 1989, they didn't want me to leave teaching. And the administration where I was teaching said, Gary, like, if you stay, you become department head. And I said, no, you don't understand. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for me to, after 15 years of announcing locally, to actually explore. They said, okay, we're going to hold your teaching position for a year. And if that doesn't work out,
you're welcome back.
You come back here. It's like, wow, can you imagine that? So that I was able to enter Turner, and I was still feeling independent.
Yeah.
Because I knew that if they screwed with me in any way, if they didn't come through with what they promised me, that I had a home.
You can go back to Jersey and...
Yeah, I mean, God was smiling on me. And in fact, I did, after a couple of months with WCW, I said to them, this isn't working out, and we need to reshuffle the deck here on my contract. Because
how were they about that when you brought up your concerns?
Yeah, they satisfied them. What it was, I'll tell you what it was when I entered there, I received the top money for a pay-per-view, then a lower amount of money for a Clash of Champions, then a lower amount of money for a syndicated TV, and then a lower amount of money for house shows. And it was all good money. It was all really good.
Was it all laid out in the contract? You get this X, Y, Z?
Yes.
Like you said.
Right. So I started in September full-time with them, and I got a full range of dates. And as we got closer to September, they canceled this one. They canceled that one.
So you're losing out on those paydays.
Right. So that if I didn't work, I didn't make money.
Even though you were under contract, it was the same philosophy.
Right. So after we got to October, and I saw they started getting canceled, I went in and I said, look, this isn't going to work for me, because I need to know that I'm making a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
I need to know that at least I have a floor. So they changed the contract.
So they guaranteed you that?
They guaranteed me, and if those dates, based upon our original agreement, went over that guarantee, I got the extra money.
Yeah.
So I couldn't.
But you at least knew you had a certain level to cover your nuts, so to say.
Absolutely. The other thing I told them on the way in was, and I guess this was like kind of brassy, but as a ring announcer, but I said to them, I travel alone. Like they wouldn't pick up your rental car unless there were 3 guys in the car.
Okay.
I said to them, I won't last. I know who I am. I know I need my independence. So I don't share cars with anyone unless I choose to.
Yeah.
And I did along the way. And the guys, because I had performer pay, but corporate benefits. So they paid all of my expenses, all my food. They paid all of my transportation. They paid for a car to bring me from home to the airport. I mean, they paid me my hotel, everything.
Was this stuff that you brought up, or it was just, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that?
That-
all these perks.
Those perks were in that contract to begin with.
They said, hey.
Yeah, the only thing I was disputing was I need to know
you're making X amount of dollars,
Right, and so I would. Now sometimes I didn't want to travel alone, and because it can get lonely out there.
Yeah.
So a guy like Steve Austin would ride with me. The Undertaker rode with me once, and they would love that because that was money that was coming out of their pocket. I would share my my food,
daily allowance or whatever.
Right, for the food, for the hotel, for the with them. I was happy to do that.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed their
company.
Mick Foley was out on the road with me. I mean, and it was cool.
Well, with those three guys in particular, Austin, Foley, Taker.
Yeah.
Obviously, you knew them in their younger days and whatnot, in the WCW days, and
people
know that stuff. But are you just dealing with the guys themselves? Here, I'm not talking the characters, but are you surprised the success those three guys had?
Absolutely not. No. For different reasons, but no.
You're not surprised at all the success they had.
No. The determination of Mick Foley, and the attitude of do whatever it takes to entertain the people. He was there. Austin and Undertaker. I mean, their wrestling skills were just through the roof.
Yeah.
Yet they had very different personalities, which through the brilliance of McMahon, were capitalized on, because Undertaker, even though he was funny, in casual conversation, when he was in the ring, he had no emotion.
When I walked through that curtain, it's time to, Mark's over here, Taker. When it's time to go to work, he was Taker.
Right, but he wasn't Undertaker at the time.
No, but you know what I'm saying.
Right, but what I'm saying is he should have had emotion in the ring. That was a downfall of his when he was Mark Calloway in WCW. McMahon took that and made him a dead man. So capitalized. Right. Once again, an extension of how he really was.
Yeah.
That he wasn't, because athletically he was supreme.
All I could say, and it's been referenced before, is look at that match, him and Luger, when he had the bad hip. And to still have the athleticism there.
Right. And Austin was different in the sense that, yes, he had supreme wrestling skills, but he
developed his personality.
He shined.
Yeah.
You could see that he had star quality.
Well, I want to ask you, because I believe you were on the show here with Foley, and we're getting ready to wrap up here, but
we can talk all night.
Okay, but I'll ask you about Foley with the ear. Were you on that show?
Yeah.
And was it true that you were actually the one that brought the ear back?
Yeah, they flipped the ear to me. His ear, it all didn't happen that night. His ear was hanging off his head by the time he got there. Every night he would do this spot.
With the ropes.
With the ropes around his head. And every night, even though the referee would try to loosen the ropes a little bit, his head was going through those top two ropes every night. Nicking his ear little by little by little.
And that's all cartilage back.
To the point where he had his ear taped down. That was before we went to Europe.
And now, was he doing this obviously he did it with the regular ropes and stuff, but the match in particular was a barbed wire match, if I remember correctly, right?
No.
So this was just a regular match?
It was a regular match, but there were two things that were different that night.
Okay.
The guys that set up the ring were not our regular ring crew. So when we went out and we started the night, the rings were too loose. They were floppy.
Yeah.
And so the first guys who wrestled told Flair, who was in charge that night. So Flair told the ring guys, tighten them up. They over-tightened them.
Yeah.
Then the referee was a guy from France, because I think it was Nick Patrick was called back to the States. There was some kind of an emergency he had. So the French referee didn't know to pull the ropes apart, even if he could, because they were so tight.
Yeah.
So Foley had extra tight ropes with no one to release the tension on the ropes.
Yeah.
And that's why when he went down, his ear stayed up in the rope.
Because, I've heard, and I've seen the match, but can't, off the top of my head, I'm having a brain fart. Yeah, loosen the ear so much, but I heard it was, one of those, when he got back in the action, that's when it kind of popped off. But
No, it popped off
when he was still in the ropes.
When he went through the ropes.
Yeah.
He went to the floor.
Yeah.
And his ear and
just kind of stayed.
And his hair, part of his hair, stayed in the ropes. And then the referee tossed his ear to me.
Yeah.
And I picked up his ear, and I brought it backstage to try to find the doctor to try to get ice.
Yeah.
To put his ear on ice.
Well, what's your reaction here when you here's the?
It's one of those things where you never know what you're going to do till it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, who would ever? If you said to me, Gary, okay, sit here. I'm going to go in the kitchen. I'm going to go in the freezer, and I'm going to bring out a body part for you to hold. I'd say, get the hell out of here. Like, what are you, crazy? But when it happens, you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And I'm someone, I won't even watch a movie that's extra bloody. Like, I have no stomach for it.
Yeah.
But this needed to happen. We needed to try to save his ear.
Go from point A to point B here.
Right. And we weren't successful, but that was the best we could have done.
We were talking about a lot of different guys and things throughout your career and all. But I got two more fan questions, but there's two things we want to bring up. First of all, you mentioned that on July 23rd, you're going to be part of the Masters of the Ring Wrestling Convention. Photos, autographs, mobile device announcements, if you want your outgoing voicemail messages. And
Yep, it's a perfect time. It's Wilmington, North Carolina.
Okay.
And it's out on the coast, and it's a vacation area, the beach. So if anyone's in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia area, or just is looking for a great place to spend a nice weekend, come on out. I'll be there from 10 in the morning till 5. And, I want to meet you. I want to meet everybody.
Yeah, definitely a good time. Masters of the Ring have done multiple shows like this and all before. I think they have a wrestling show that evening as well. We'll put a link on below for like the YouTube version of this and whatnot, and through our social media.
Yep, I'll be at the convention, but I'm not scheduled for the evening event.
So, doing things like this, the conventions and all that you do from time to time,
Yep.
What kind of reaction do you get from the fans?
Oh, you never know. People come up with stories that would like blow you away. Things from, I had a guy come up to me once, and he told me that as a kid, he wouldn't talk, whatever reason, he wouldn't talk to his parents. He just wouldn't talk to anyone, and the only way they got him to talk was he would do my ring announcements. It was kind of odd, and he said he would look at me. And I looked like, remember before we talked about Friendly Bob Freed and
yes.
being the approachable guy.
Mm-hmm.
He would look at me, and I would look like a regular guy, and I was in front of people, and I was announcing, and he said that gave him the courage to start talking. Now,
Was this and
never,
I don't mean this in a bad way, special needs child or something like that? Or was he just a shy, introverted kid?
I think he was just a shy, introverted kid who was going through something at the time. You never know how you're going to touch people, even though I'm like playing a more insignificant role in the show. You just don't know how people will take to you.
Well, speaking of which, and you'll be at the show on the July 23rd, folks. Yeah, click the link below. That's right. Yeah, you too.
July 23rd, Wilmington, North Carolina.
Will you have copies of Body Slammers there? Or?
I'll have my book Body Slams there. I have memorabilia from WCW and WWF that I sell, old programs and posters and T-shirts and all original stuff, nothing reprinted or redone. I'll have my trading card. If people want to buy a trading card, I'll sign it. People have WWE encyclopedias. I'll be happy to sign. Pose for pictures. I'm a one-man...
Kiss babies, he's running for office, folks.
I'm one-man band.
Yeah, and no, he's not stealing Heath Slater's line, but he is going to be the independent runner for New Jersey as far as the president come November. But and Carolina too, since he'll be in Wilmington, July 23rd.
There you go.
So obviously we mentioned the book there, but I heard a little birdie had told me that you might have.
Oh wait! I don't like the beginning of this question.
No. You look like this. Little Birdie had told me you might have some more information, or that could be enough stuff or stories to be another book. Is that true?
Oh, I'm going to be writing another book, but it's not a wrestling book.
Can we ask what it might be?
Yeah, a mystery.
Okay.
Now it might. I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I'm going to be writing in the fall and into the winter, but it might be wrestling based. I've written a wrestling based screenplay that that I had bound, and I also have at these conventions, and that I've shopped around here and there.
Any positive response for that?
No. To tell you the truth, it must stink. I don't know. When you create something and you don't get like immediate reaction from something, you have to start thinking, well, maybe it's me.
You start overthinking things.
But then you've heard of people who have successes, who have shopped around a product for decades, and then all of a sudden someone sees something in it and buys the property, and it hits as a movie or something. But I'm at the stage now where I'm thinking, well, maybe it's not so good. But
hey, High Spots, Feinstein, the rest of you guys who do video production, call Gary. Let's go. Yeah, we'll start an Indiegogo or whatever social crowd surfing. Let's go. Let's get this made.
I guess I'm not the best pitchman for my own screenplay, but I don't know, and I have it, and anyone wants to see it, I'll be happy to ship it off to them.
And you're paying for shipping, you cheap bastards. No. But do you already have an idea where you want to take this mystery, or are you still thinking about things?
I'm still thinking about it. I'm still. I'm not exact. I don't know that it's even a good thing to know where it's going. Like from when I start writing it, I'm not sure that I want to have it so completely mapped out. I think I may want it to have a life of its own and see where it goes as I write.
But is the fall, winter there a hard line on when you want to start working on this project? Yeah,
absolutely. When I wrote Body Slams, I wrote for 2 years. And I wasn't teaching, I wasn't announcing, I sat home. I canceled my cable subscription, I had no TV, and it was wonderful. It was great.
Such a unique perspective. Let's wrap up with these two other fan questions that came in through.
I have a feeling that you're holding like the zingers for the end.
No, they're good because obviously people brought up things that.
I'm okay with zingers.
I take them for what you mean.
Go ahead.
But other people brought up.
Hit me.
Yeah. I'm not gonna hit you like you hit me with that armbar. What's your favorite match that you got to introduce? And that's from a guy named Larry Francis.
Oh, Larry Francis. Larry Francis, when you announce for 35 years and you've announced tens of thousands of matches, that's a real tough one, Larry. I could make up an answer, but I really don't have a definitive answer.
Well, is there and obviously it goes back to thousands and thousands of guys, but are certain guys that you always got enjoyment out of watching?
Well, there were 2 series of matches that I enjoyed. Maybe Larry, this would fall into what you're talking about. When I was with WWF, after San Martino lost the world title to superstar Billy Graham, he came back for a rematch. And at the Philadelphia Spectrum, 3 months in a row, it was Bruno San Martino versus superstar Billy Graham. Sold out the Philadelphia Spectrum, which was 19,500 people, 3 months in a row. That was a thrilling series. When I was with WCW, spread out over a longer period of time, the Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair series of matches. That was
hands down.
That was thrilling and exciting also. The night that Ron Simmons won the world title from Vader, that was thrilling too. Anytime I announced in Europe, Royal Albert Hall, I mean, what an opportunity that was to do that. So there are a lot of, I would say those 2 series of San Martino, Graham, and Flair Steamboat series were supercharged.
Yeah, because I would say go pay $9.99 and all that, but we don't get any royalties, so we're not going to say YouTube them if you can. The other question here is from a Ron Brown out in Oklahoma. What are your thoughts on the industry that's changed so much throughout the years from when you got in it, from wrestling, as some would say, to sports entertainment?
What has changed?
What
Past the obvious?
Yeah. What's your thought on how things have changed throughout the years?
Oh, you know what? There are probably less people watching wrestling today than there were when they at the height of the territories. If you were to add up all the different territories and their live shows, their syndicated shows in the callers or the questioners territory, like Mid-South, all of their house shows and their TVs. I would just like to see more variety, to tell you the truth. But I'm not one of these guys that says, "Oh, it was great back then, and it's horrible now." Not at all. I'm really impressed with many of the talented wrestlers that are. I watched WWE a couple times, the week before WrestleMania and the week after. There's a lot of terrific talent there, a lot of great talent on the indies, especially, which is why I worked with Ring of Honor and I had such a thrilling time of working with these guys. Now at the time, this was the mid 2000s. Ring of Honor, I was working with Colt Cabana. I was interviewing CM Punk, Daniel Bryant. I mean, this is huge.
Of this generation's.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thrill for me to see how these guys have worked and flourished. And what's the name of the guy now that's it's the top WWE now? He was also with it's a fellow from Georgia. He was with Ring of Honor for a long time.
Seth Rollins? No, but he's not from Georgia.
No. Anyway, what a crop of Homicide, the New York Crew, the Hit Squad. I mean, it just went on and on and on. And Nigel McGuinness was with Ring of Honor at the time that I was there. John Walters was at Ring of Honor, who went on to work for the Mexican organization.
AAA or?
No, it was a U.S. based lucha group.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be one that's going to put down today's wrestling. It's different.
Yeah.
It's different and it's not different.
Is that just because of how times have changed throughout the years?
Well, it's because of what we talked about earlier, where it was presented as a real competition back then and not now. I think it makes it more difficult now to capture people's imagination because of the exposure that the business has had.
But also, in certain ways, at least for me, I can only speak for me, there's a certain amount of respect, too, for what the guys and gals put their bodies through.
Absolutely.
Because that's had to extend further and further to cross that line.
And what the exposure of the business has also done for the thinking fan is giving you more levels on which to appreciate what you're seeing.
Yeah. Which
we didn't have back then because, we didn't have an insight as to the inner workings of what was going on in wrestling. So it's a richer experience for a fan, but I think it makes it more difficult for the performer.
Well, I just looked at the clock on this. We've gone well over an hour.
My gosh.
Gary Michael Cappetta, thank you, sir.
Can we plug something in August?
Yeah, go for it.
You want to talk about it?
We had taken a quick break here, and we had asked Gary about the event that fans on our social media and all are aware of, helping Operation Ward 57 that helps different groups of wounded warriors. And we're going to be doing a live broadcast in Philadelphia August 23rd. And Gary's said okay to coming down to be a part of that show.
I thank you for inviting me, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Apter's going to be there, who's a longtime colleague of yours.
Absolutely,
yeah. Great guy as well. And, stay tuned on the social media for that, Facebook and all that technological stuff. So.
And it's for a great cause.
Yeah.
And anyone that comes out, Hopefully there'll be opportunity. We take pictures or
Yeah,
whatever.
we'll-
You know, this is, you pay your admission, and everything after you get in there is no
It's going to be a
cost.
3-ring circus. Everything else is a bonus. Working on food, and it's going to be a good
Oh,
night
you didn't
out.
tell me there's going to be food.
Oh, yeah.
That's even better.
Yeah.
You're going to feed me?
Yeah. You're paying double, Gary.
There you go.
So,
hey, it's for a great cause.
Yeah, that's fine. No,
I'll pay triple.
All kidding aside, though, it's going to be a good night out. But thank you for welcoming us in your home, and
Literally.
we're sitting in his den, living room, whatever you want to call it.
We're in the middle of the woods.
Yes. Yeah. Can you put that knife down, please, Gary? Gary.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, Lord have mercy on my next 30 years. My next 30 years, I'm gonna have some
Hi, this is Booker T, 5-time WCW champion and general manager of Friday Night SmackDown. You listen to Crazy Train Radio. Now, can you dig that, sucker?